Hello and welcome. I'm Millicent Walker. Tonight, President Buhari inaugurates Technical Committee to advise government on funding and sustainable implementation of proposed new minimum wage. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo and Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka seek to draw global attention to the dangers of fake news, warn that it can trigger a world war if left unchecked. INEC Chairman Mahmood Yakubu insists security agencies must work in synergy with the electoral umpire to ensure the success of the 2019 elections. And British Prime Minister Theresa May loses Brexit House of Commons vote as rebel Conservative MPs side with Labour against her EU withdrawal deal.
And in business news tonight, World Bank projects 2.2% GDP growth for Nigeria this year, up from 2.1% in 2018.
On sports news tonight, Bendel Insurance, Remo Stars, Kada City and Gombe United gained promotion to the Nigeria Professional Football League via the NNL Super 8 playoffs.
And from Abuja, police arrest 16 suspects in connection with violence at Tuesday's APC governorship rally flag-off in Lagos. Declares Sego, a leader of National Union of Road Transport Workers, wanted.
President Muhammadu Buhari has inaugurated an advisory technical committee that will advise government on new sources of funds as well as ways to implement the proposed new minimum wage in a sustainable manner. Other items of reference for the committee include proposing a work plan and modalities for implementation. Our correspondent Ibrahim Adura reports on this and the outcome of the first Federal Executive Council meeting in the new year.
In keeping with the promise made during the 2019 budget speech to the National Assembly, President Muhammadu Buhari arrives to inaugurate a 24-man technical advisory committee. Before the inauguration, however, he made a firm commitment.
I want to make it clear that there is no question about whether the national minimum wage will be reviewed upwards. I am committed to a review of the minimum wage.
In stating his reasons for setting up the committee, President Buhari explains that members are to advise government on how best to source, in a sustained manner, the additional costs that will arise from increases in salaries and allowances.
A, to develop and advise government on how to successfully bring about a smooth implementation of the impending wage increases. B, identify new revenue sources as well as areas of existing expenditure from where some savings could be made in order to fund the wage increases without adversely impacting the nation's development goals as set out in the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan.
He adds that others who earn above the minimum wage will also have a salary review in future. The committee comprises economists and administrators from the public and private sectors and is to be headed by Mr. Bismarck Riwani, with the Director General of the Budget Office as Secretary. Other members include heads of the National Bureau of Statistics, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Debt Management Office, and the Accountant General of the Federation. The committee is to turn in its reporting recommendations a month from the day of inauguration. The President also presided over the first Federal Executive Council meeting in 2019. Closed-door deliberations lasted about 5 hours. The briefing that followed reveals that the Council approves 4 new universities.
They are Greenfield University at Kasarami in Kaduna State, Dominion University in Ibadan, Oyo State, Trinity University in Laloko in Ogun State, and Westland University in Iwo, Osun State.
The Ministry of Transport got approval to spend over $5 million for communications equipment. Other approvals are construction of 4 roads across the country and a policy document that will guide maintenance in the public sector.
This, for me, is perhaps the most defining memorandum I have presented to Council to address this long and enduring problem of no maintenance. It is not just to solve a problem that we have spoken so much about, but it is also to create an economy that we haven't developed.
The minister believes the framework will not only improve maintenance, but provide employment for many. From the presidential villa, Ibrahim Adra, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is concerned that fake news is capable of discrediting public information and causing fatal damage and violence in the country. Delivering a keynote address at the BBC conference on fake news in Abuja, Professor Osinbajo warned that if it is not checked, nothing will be believable. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka also warns that fake news is capable of causing World War III. Our correspondent Gloria Umezuoke reports.
As the nation prepares for the 2019 general election, one issue of concern is the phenomenon of fake news.
You know what he said now about reputation?
At this conference, the British Broadcasting Corporation is advancing strategies to check the rise of fake news in the country.
We will be doing fact-checking around claims made during the general election campaign. Our African digital team have been learning the specialist data and journalism techniques needed to deliver fact checks on health, education and the economy. Our staff and partners are receiving more verification training using different apps that show us how to spot doctored images using reverse image searches.
Several presidential candidates and media practitioners make up the audience as a panel of discussants highlights the dangers of fake news, especially as the 2019 general election approaches.
If governments are proactive, if agencies are proactive, if parastatals are proactive in putting out information in the public space, the chances of fake news gaining the ascendancy will be slightly reduced. But somebody who wants to misinform, somebody who wants to create confusion, somebody who wants to bring the country down, will still go ahead with this type of information.
It infringes on professionalism. It compromises integrity, name that you've built, brands that you've built over decades. So we make sure that as editors, we fact check. If you cannot prove it, then it cannot even be called a news item.
Those who create fake news are sick in the head, and they're also cowards, because they lack the conviction of their own beliefs, and so they transfer to other people, what they really are thinking. And if we're not careful, World War III will be started by fake news, and that fake news probably will be generated by a Nigerian.
I see some news that...
Giving details of fake news concerning him, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo warns that the phenomenon is fast depleting the credibility of public information.
The capacity of fake news to cause alarm and fear and even fatal violence has been demonstrated again and again. One of the great worries should be, for us, what harm is done to public information. I think that the time may come, if nothing is done, when nothing will be believed or nothing will be believable.
Titled #BeyondFakeNews, the BBC aims at finding ways to address misinformation through events, media literacy programs, and journalistic reports.
The President of Senate and the Director General of the People's Democratic Party and the Atiku Presidential Campaign Council, Dr. Bukola Saraki, is alleging massive corruption in the oil sector. He disagrees with the figures released by the federal government. Dr. Saraki, in an exclusive interview with Channels Television, says the consumption figure of petrol released by the federal government is not realistic and has linked that to what he describes as leakages in the system.
During the first scam, one of the major issues that came up there was that we were importing fuel based on an assumption of 30 million liters consumption daily. And all statistics, all experts will tell you that Nigeria cannot consume maximum 22 million liters a day. So at that time, we said the Jonathan government was condoning corruption by allowing us to be important. And because of that, we're losing a lot of money, because instead of capping at 20 million liters a day, we're doing about 30 million liters a day. Now, you will have thought that a government that wants to fight corruption, prevent leakages, would, even if you're going to still maintain subsidy, you would ensure that the subsidy is better managed. Instead of 30 million to bring down, the government is doing this based on 50 million litres. So we're not consuming. We cannot consume 50 million litres a day. It is just money being stolen.
So it's fraud.
Big time fraud.
You think the government, President Buhari, is aware of this?
They report to him. So I run his government, but a lot of us have said there is no way.
Why is the National Assembly not investigating this?
We have said, but where you have an environment where agencies of government are emboldened to disregard the National Assembly, it's a big issue. We have said it. I said it in last year's budget that you must bring subsidy into the budget. NNPC convinced the president to say no. It is not subsidy on the recovery. But what on the recovery? They're not drilling oil to produce it. They're just importing petroleum products. Finally, in 2019, after 2 years, the president has now decided to bring it in. He should have done that all along. But the point is that these kind of decisions have led to leakages. Because if it had been properly managed, there is no way we'll be based, and we're losing a lot of money. These are the leakages that's happening. This is the real corruption.
Well, it is not only the Senate President who is skeptical about the federal government's anti-corruption mantra. The presidential candidate of the Action Democratic Party, ADP, Yabaji Sani, has also asked President Muhammadu Buhari to start paying lip service to the fight against corruption, while many Nigerians continue to battle poverty. Mr. Sani, who threw this challenge at a meeting between the leadership of the party and its candidate in Abuja, says it's time to change the narrative.
So I know what I'm talking about. I know that our oil and gas sector is not in any way operated anything near the international best practice. And for you to know that it's conspiracy against the people of this country, the operators are international organizations. They refuse to operate in accordance with international best practice. So it's conspiracy. I know how to break the conspiracy. Unfortunately, we have a president that was there, I don't know how many years ago now, 40 or how many years, he was there as the Commissioner of Petroleum. He's now there as the Minister of Petroleum Resources. And what is happening under his nose is that you have more endemic corruption in NNPC. NNPC just became an organization that does not follow due process anymore.
Ahead of the general elections, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, insists the nation's security agencies must work in synergy with the electoral umpire if the 2019 elections are to surpass the expectations of Nigerians. INEC's chief executive explains that security agencies are mandated by Section 29, subsection 3 of the 2010 Electoral Act as amended to implement the security plans laid out by INEC and not the reverse. The INEC chairman made this known while addressing the quarterly meeting of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security at the Commission's headquarters in Abuja.
This meeting is convened primarily to update members of XS on our preparations for the 2019 general elections. It is also an opportunity to hear from the security agencies on your preparations so far. However, learning from the experience of some of the 195 off-season elections conducted since 2015, it is pertinent to draw our attention to the need for a different approach to the deployment of security agencies during elections. The Nigeria Police Force remains the lead agency for election security. Other security agencies will play a supportive role to the Nigeria Police. However, we need a new security architecture for 2019, consistent with the provision of Section 29, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, which provides as follows, and I quote, "Notwithstanding the provisions of any other law and for purposes of securing the vote, the Commission shall be responsible for requesting for the deployment of relevant security personnel necessary for elections or registration of voters, and shall assign them in a manner to be determined by the Commission in consultation with the relevant security agencies.
In part two, after the break, Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike asks INEC to be fair to all political parties as they prepare for the general elections. Please stay with us.